Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Craven the Hunter, who uses all the methods of the animals.
This Thursday.
Once you're on his list, there's only one way off.
Are you like your father?
He puts evil into the world. I get rid of people like him.
Who's next?
Witness the making of a new Marvel villain.
You think you have some kind of honor? You're a criminal, just like our father.
Aaron Taylor Johnson is Craven the Hunter. Rated R. Under 17 on admitted without parent. In theaters Thursday.
Hello, everybody. And I'm going to apologize now. I am not feeling that great. And welcome to another episode of the Kelly Green Hour as we get you set for week 4. I can't believe it's already week 14 in the National Football League as the Philadelphia Eagles are set to do battle with the 3-9 Carolina Panthers. I'm your host, LJ Rell. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, what's up, bud?
Well, I can definitely say I'm feeling better than you, despite maybe a lack of sleep compared to you. But I mean, this is what, like we said, we're going to try to make this episode short and sweet for you, and it hopefully can be that way. I mean, the game last night definitely was a disappointment. It put not a full dagger, but a bit of a big bump in the road in the Eagles' way of potentially winning the number 1 seed. So, but we do get the Carolina Panthers. So
it would be nice to get the Lions out of the dome. If there's 17 games this year, the Lions will have played 14 inside the dome. That includes Minnesota, Dallas, Houston, Arizona. Their away games or their outdoor games are Green Bay, Chicago, and San Francisco, which is, San Francisco. It's crazy that they've been lucky enough to have that schedule. Before we jump into the game, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJHurrell54. And follow the Eagles Pinpool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Pinpool Network. And then if you're joining us live on this stream, let us know your thoughts on the game, your prediction, players to watch. Is there any concern going into this game? Because, I mean, the Eagles are a 12.5, 13.5 point favorite. Like, the last time they were this big of a favorite was last year against Arizona, and guess what happened in that game? They lost. How do I know? Obviously we watched it, but I was also there, so that wasn't fun to experience that. The Eagles do have some injury concerns. Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brown out, Dallas Goedert out, Britton Covey, who cares, out. Devontae Smith is back. Darius Slay is back. So it's going to be interesting what type of – Eagles are obviously a more talented team than the Carolina Panthers. They're a better team than Carolina, but – Carolina has been playing feisty over the last couple of weeks. They took the Bucs to overtime last week. They played the Chiefs, tough a couple of weeks ago. This isn't going to be a pushover matchup. In this game, look, the Eagles are a running team, and the Panthers give up like 170 yards rushing a game. Saquon has a chance to go for $150. This is also an opportunity maybe to get the passing game going. We'll see what the Eagles decide to do, but they can't overlook the Panthers to the Pennsylvania battle next week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. If they look past the Panthers have a chance to surprise them.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. I mean, the Saints and Giants are in stiff competition, but they won both of those games, very close matchups. And then they went into the bye week on a high and they've lost back-to-back games, but it was against the Tampa Bay Bucs, who are an extremely gritty and competitive football team with Baker Mayfield at the helm. And the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, lucky or not, are booked their ticket to the playoffs, well on their way to winning the number 1 seed in the AFC. And they took the Chiefs right down to a field goal game that, of course, ended in typical Chiefs debauchery form with some plays or things that could have went a different way for the Panthers and they might have gotten that W, but they didn't. But those are two really tough matchups that they're coming off of, playing their best football. Bryce Young's looking the best he's looked since he got drafted into the NFL. So you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to take these guys and look past them, despite, what statistics say. I mean, they're 25th or worse nearly across the board, offensively and defensively. But they have been playing a lot better football. If you look at the splits over the last, call it 5 weeks because of the bye week, over their last 4 games, they're definitely a far superior team than what they look like for the first 8 weeks of the season. So this could be a Panthers team. While I think they're definitely a few players away, a few position needs away from being anywhere near a competitive team, they're definitely a team that should not be disrespected or should not just be swept under the rug. And when you're looking ahead to you could call it a far more important matchup for the Eagles, because every week seems to be a prove-it week for them, although the conversation's finally flowing in their direction, as you should respect them. They should have been respected long ago. It seems to be flowing in their direction. You can't look past this game. You definitely can't.
No, you can't. And like I said, if you look past them to Pittsburgh next week, they'll come here and surprise you. We'll see what happens. Miles Sanders making his return to Philly. Bryce Young, you mentioned it. He's been looking a lot better ever since he got benched. So we'll see what Vic Fangio has for him. Try to see if he can. I know Bryce Young's not a rookie, but see if he can confuse the young quarterback. But I'm more intrigued on how will the Eagles offense fare. What will the plan be? Will they try to get Saquon his yards early and get him out the game if they can get a big lead? Will they try to get the passing game going? I mean, that's going to be the key thing in this game. Obviously, you want to come out healthy. You don't want to leave anybody to potentially get hurt, obviously. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Also, like, without Dallas Goedert, you're going to have to get Grant Calcaterra involved, CJ Uzama involved. We'll see what happens there. But I think that this is a game that the offense should be able to get rolling in all facets of the game, throwing and running. We know that the Eagles are the team that throws the ball the least in the league and rushes the ball the most in the league. So maybe there'll be a bit more of a balance act early on, and hopefully they can score early in this game. Obviously, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL when it comes to scoring in the first quarter. I don't think it matters. Like, we kind of have to get over the fact that they're not a fast starting team this year. But they're a team that when you get to the second half, they'll ride Saquon. The offensive line will continue to bully the opposing defensive line and wear them down, and they'll score a bunch of points in the second half. I don't care how they do it as long as they win. I just want them to win. Like you mentioned, that Detroit winning against Green Bay yesterday really puts a damper in the Eagles' chances of getting the number 1 seed. But if the Eagles were going to win out, I mean, the Lions' schedule isn't – the Lions, I think, have the toughest schedule remaining or something like that. They have the Bills next week. They have Chicago on the road, so they have to go outside in a cold Chicago. They have San Francisco, who could be, besides McCaffrey, could be getting healthy. And then a Vikings team that could potentially be battling for the division in Week 18. So I'm not saying that the Lions are going to lose, say, 2 more games the rest of the year, but, there could be potential pitfalls the remaining way for the Lions. And if the Eagles just continue to take it 1 game at a time, 1 week at a time, getting 1% better every day, as Nick Sirianni says, maybe when we get to Week 18, they'll be battling for the number 1 seed. And Saquon could be battling for the NFL rushing record. Like, there could be a bunch of things that could be happening by Week 18, but you don't want to look past the upcoming opponent.
Yeah, definitely. You hit on it. This feels like a game where, Jalen Hurts should, it's not necessarily that I'm concerned about Jalen Hurts, but he hasn't had to throw the football a lot. Come the postseason, and I know you continue to do what's working and don't move away from the run. But I mean, once you hit the playoffs, like some of these teams, like look at the Detroit Lions. I know you're not worried about starting slow, but if you fall a score and a half, 2 scores behind the Detroit Lions, that might be it. No matter how good you are in the second half, the Lions are one of those teams that even if you manage to put up 28 points in the second half and you start the second half down by 10 or 14, they'll probably still put up 21 points in the second half too. They're that type of team that, they just put tons of points on the board. The Green Bay Packers have been playing extremely well, putting up a lot of points on the board as well. They've improved a lot. And I think it was pointed out today, their only 3 losses have come against the top 3 teams in the NFC, the Eagles, the Lions, and the Vikings, I think. Lions twice, I think, in the Vikings. So, it's you don't want to completely discredit the slow starts, because you definitely are going to reach a point where, if you can make it as far as the Super Bowl, can you start slow against the Chiefs or the Ravens? We showed we could start slow against the Ravens and make something happen, but can you do it a second time when the Ravens are going to come in with a potentially different game plan? I don't want to overreact to it, but I don't want to underreact to it, because I think that it's important that, eventually they start to figure it out in some form or fashion to put points on the board and keep it close. You got to keep it, like I find in the all-important games, it's going to be important to keep it within 3 or 7 points and not fall behind by 10 or 14 and have to dig out of it and think, this is just like the past games, and that they're going to be able to do it again. Because just as, the Chiefs may be getting lucky in their wins, the Eagles could be getting lucky in the fact that they've been able, not completely lucky, but maybe they've had the advantage go their way so many times. Eventually luck or situation will turn the other way for the Eagles, and you definitely don't want that to come playoff time. So it would be nice to see Jalen Hurts get comfortable, the team get off to a fast start. If you start so against the Panthers, yes, you can probably get it hot in the second half and run away with it, but you'd like to think that you can get ahead of this team and take advantage of the circumstance that this team's in. While they've been playing better, they've been getting better, there should be a team that you should be able to get out early against, get scores often, and hopefully get some rest to your key players as well, because as you noted, we are starting to get a little bit more banged up at the start of the week, a lot more no practice or limited participants that do end up playing come Sunday. But it's, you want to see some of the storylines that have been working against you start to be able to turn those around in a circumstance and in a game like this where you should be able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see. There's no reason to move away from what's working, like you said, from a rushing standpoint. The Panthers ranked dead last. Teams rushed the most against them, and they have the most yards against them. So obviously you can probably let Saquon go out there and run for, 150 to 200 yards again, as crazy as that sounds. But you could probably get him to do that. But I also think that it's important to maybe get Jalen Hurts some reps and make sure, he's comfortable to throw the ball and do it effectively, because he's going to be asked to start doing it eventually in some games. We're doing what's working, but what happens if it stops working?
Well, that's easier said than done with this offensive line and with Saquon.
It is. It's true. But if you get that matchup against the Detroit Lions and things aren't working, can you continue to, and you're starting to fall behind by score, can you continue to lean into that? Or are you going to have to lean into Jalen Hurts throwing a football eventually a bit too?
The Eagles used the running game to open the passing game. They just haven't had to really use the passing game because the running game has been doing so well. So we'll see what happens. Looking at the offense for Carolina, obviously led by Bryce Young. I forgot that Miles Sanders is on IR, so we won't get to see him. Chuba Hubbard is good. Jonathan Brooks is the rookie. Adam Thielen, even at his age, is still performing really well. The rookie Xavier Legette, he should be a nice matchup between him and Quinyon Mitchell. And then another rookie like Chadavion Sanders, he's questionable. We'll see if he plays. And then the offensive line for Carolina, Jalen Carter should be able to really pick up some numbers this week. Their offensive line isn't really that good. So I expect Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Milton Williams. I expect all the big guys up front to feast, which is going to help out the secondary, which obviously, I mean, and I think that is going to be even more in terms of helping out Tristan McCollum, who's going to be starting at safety next to CJ and whoever they bring up, I guess it would be Andre Sam, who will probably be brought up. This could be, maybe we'll see. We hate when he's on the field because every time he's on the field, something bad happens, but maybe Avonte Maddox can get some safety play. Maybe he'll be better at safety than he is at corner. But yeah, I think the front four should really feast for the Eagles this week.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's offensive line is pretty much middle of the pack, so they're not. We've faced easier and we faced harder. So we've done amazing things against tougher offensive lines, and we've done absolutely humongous games against really bad offensive lines. So I really think that, you can definitely take advantage of this Carolina defensive line or offensive line. I posted earlier this week, we're on incentive watch again. Josh Sweat is a sack away from cashing in $500,000. And then from there, he also has escalators. If he gets 10, 11, and 12, he can make up to $2 million off of this. So hopefully Josh Sweat, he's got dollar signs in his eyes. He pins it back and he goes. He's having, like we said, Josh Sweat, he has games here and there, but it never seems to be consistent. It feels like when you look back on a season with Josh Sweat, you can look back and talk about 4 or 5 games, but you can never talk about consistency or a full season, which is one of the reasons that we're saying, it's a premium position. Someone's going to pay for those 4 or 5 games a year that Howie probably isn't going to be willing to pay for. So we could be seeing the end of Josh Sweat in Philly, but I would love to see him pick up some great incentives that were put out there to make him work and to make him do well. And I think that he could definitely do that against this offensive line, get that sack number 8 and get headed towards 10 through 12. And otherwise, like you said, they have some pieces. They're a good young team. They Chuba Hubbard, like you said, Jonathan Brooks, who's barely getting a look. But he was,
he was injured, so he was
injured. Yes, he was injured, but he's been healthy for the last, I think it's 3 weeks since they've activated him. But Chuba Hubbard got his extension. He's been playing extremely well. Great to see. He's Canadian kid, so even better. You don't see much of that in the NFL. So, but I mean, they haven't had to go to Jonathan Brooks. They kind of considered redshirting Jonathan Brooks, and now it looks like he's riding, second to Chuba Hubbard for this year and maybe even a good chunk of next year, or split it more next year. No, highly unlikely. And then, like you said, Xavier Legette, I mean, they drafted him pretty high. He's got a really intriguing, run after. A lot of them were kind of calling him like a discount, AJ Brown. Can he make things happen in the NFL and turn into like AJ Brown? It'll be interesting to see. I mean, he's doing some great things in an offense that really hasn't been all that great, but is getting better. Adam Thielen, he made, I think it was one amazing catch last week that got called back, and then he made one amazing catch that actually counted last week. So, I mean, like you said, that's super impressive at the age of 34 to see Adam Thielen doing what he's doing. He's still able to be, a trustworthy target for Bryce Young, which is good. You want that, a veteran presence in that room. Jatavian Sanders, hopefully, we hope he doesn't play, but I mean, it's good to see young guys like that get a shot, get their chance. There's hope for this Carolina Panthers team, just probably not this year, probably not next year. They need to make some splashes in free agency and probably make a few more really good draft picks to round this team out. And get a new owner,
because Tepper's terrible.
That too. Yes, a new one. But I mean, we can't get rid of owners. But I mean, you do have Dave Canellis, who's kind of known to be like a quarterback whisperer. And it seems like, while it became scrutinized, the benching, it seems like the benching kind of worked. And Canellis was able to work with Young and get him somewhat out of the early, the yips that he kind of was having. So hopefully he's headed in a better direction. But overall, like you said, don't look past this team. Don't disrespect this team because they have put up 2 great weeks against 2 highly competitive teams. So not trying to look past them, but this should be a matchup that, the Eagles should win. They should be able to take advantage of many aspects of a very well-balanced game. Despite as complimentary as we've been of, some of the wide receivers and some of the pieces, offensively, Chuba Hubbard, not the world's most efficient running back. So up against a run defense that ranks among the tops in the league, I don't expect Chuba Hubbard to be, huge factor in the game. I mean, they're going to go to him. They're going to try and get him going. But this seems like a game where they will have to move away from the run and get to the pass. And Bryce Young, while he's improved, he does have 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So that you can get some pressure on Bryce Young. That you can make Bryce Young make mistakes. He's still working on things. He's still improving. But it's something that, if you can get the points,
Mitchell will finally get an interception.
I would hope so. I mean, I'm getting tired of talking about it weekly. Will Kenyon Mitchell get the interception? My God, just get the interception. I mean, this should be the week.
They also don't target him.
Exactly. And that makes it tough because, when you get 4 or 5 targets a game, it makes it hard to get your hands on the ball, because if they're throwing your way, it's because they see something there, whether it be that he's a step behind or whether it be, and sometimes it is that he's a step behind and he's making a big ball hawk play to knock a ball down after the fact. But it never seems like they throw to him when he's in position. At the beginning of the season they did, but then they've gotten away from it. But he's got to get it, but he's got to be thrown to more. If he gets thrown to like some of the other corners where he's getting 6 to 10 targets thrown his way a game, like maybe the linebackers who are seeing lots of targets because that's one of the weak points is their ability to cover, then he'd probably have an interception, probably multiple by now. But hopefully this is a week that he can get it, because Bryce Young, he's a guy that you can make mistakes, and that he might make the wrong decision and throw in Kenyon Mitchell's area just at the wrong time. Just the situation Mitchell needs.
And I'm a Bryce Young fan, being that I'm an Alabama fan, so it's gonna be tough. Tony, hello, thanks for joining us. Ryan, hi guys. Eagles are winning. It's the regular season. Saquon is carrying this team on offense, but come playoff time, can this team only rely on Barkley? I don't think so. Yes, Hurts runs too, but not referencing that. Hurts needs to show us he can take over a game and average 230 to 240 yards in 3 to 4 games on 20 to 25 passes. So when playoff time comes, he can run a team if needed. It's crucial he shows us he can, so it can be done in the playoffs. So absolutely have to. I disagree with that. He has to complete 20 to 25 passes and has to throw for 230 to 240 yards. I mean, he has we've seen him do it in the past. And I think when you have a healthy A.J. Brown and you have a healthy Devontae Smith, like, you have that there, like, if you need it. There is no sense in going to something that you absolutely don't need to go to. We know that this is a running football team. And look, Saquon, is he going to have this success in the playoffs? Probably not. He's not going to, average 125 yards. Maybe he will. Who knows? But I don't think that Jalen needs to go out there and prove that he can win a football game, but like it's being by himself, pretty much, I think is what you're saying. He doesn't have to go out there and prove that. We've seen him do it in the past. Just because he hasn't had to do it this year doesn't mean he can't do it. So I think that we shouldn't force on the offense something that we don't need to force, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely makes sense, and I agree. You don't force what you don't have to. I mean, to me, I'm just kind of in the like kind of in a way what Ryan is saying is like this is an opportunity for Jalen Hurts to throw the ball a few more times and maybe 15, 20 attempts at the game and see what he can do. But don't force it. Obviously, you don't have to force, because I agree with you. We've seen, when you need a big play, when you need a chunk play, he knows he can go to A.J. Brown. Jalen Hurts, I was looking at the stats, he's one of the top 3 passers in the league against man coverage, because he knows that his 2 guys, he can put that ball where only his 2 guys, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, can get it. And we know, it's been tough because, A.J. Brown missed 3 games. Devontae Smith missed 2 games. So of all the games this season, only half games. Goddard's missed a bunch. Yeah, like he hasn't really had the entire arsenal of his offensive receiving weaponry for much of the season, if at all. Like there's only been 2 or 3 games this season where all of them have been together and inclusively healthy. Like, I mean, and I don't want to make excuses for Jalen Hurts or for, if the pass game doesn't work because of injuries, because there's other teams that are suffering through similar situations. And it's absolutely next man up. And in Jalen Hurts' mind, next man up seems to be just pepper the 2 guys you trust the most. We've seen Saquon Barkley get more targets in the absence of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown gets more targets when Devontae's not around. Devontae gets more targets when A.J.'s not around. It's just he puts more on the guys who are healthy and who he has the most trust in. But we know he can do it. And that's not it. Like, it's good to give him the opportunity to throw the ball when you need to, especially against such a weak defense, and take advantage where you can, work on some things like, I don't want to say this is like practice, but it's an opportunity for it to be like practice and take advantage of it. But we know Jalen Hurts can do it. I have every bit of faith in it. And I know that it's become, like the topic of discussion. I think, who is it? Acho, who said
Emmanuel Acho.
Yeah, Emmanuel Acho, who's saying, what are you hiding with Jalen Hurts? Has he not watched Jalen Hurts in crucial point? Look back at the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts can throw the football. We know that he can in a spot, but why throw the ball 30 times when you can run the ball 40 times a game and get way more yards than you will ever get from the 30 pass attempts and whatever completions you get from Jalen Hurts? There's no reason to force it, and no team has given us a reason to move away from Saquon Barkley, to move away from what this offensive line is able to do to other teams' defensive lines. So it's not that we're hiding anything, or that you need to desperately go out there and throw 30 passes against the Carolina Panthers to prove you can do it. It's that no one's forced us to. So why bother doing something we don't need to do and put in, you put people at risk too. Like, we saw the Trevor Lawrence injury. We don't want to see those types of things happen. We've seen some wide receivers go down too, that taken unnecessary shots on some bad passes. So why put other people at risk? Why put other people in a situation that they don't have to be in when the defense has given us all we need in the run game?
Little G joins us. Thank you for joining us, buddy. He has the Eagles defeating the Panthers 28-14. We like that score. Ryan says, just because we saw it in the past doesn't mean the confidence is there. If it's not happening a little bit, it's crucial we see it in his confidence. I think he has confidence. Last week he hit A.J. Brown on a couple of slants. We've seen him earlier this year, like on 4th down. I know it was against the Giants, throwing the deep bombs. Again, you don't have to force it. He doesn't need to. Yeah, he threw for 118 yards, but they also ran for over 200 yards. They also can run for over 200 yards. Like, it doesn't matter how they get the wins, how they score the points. A rushing touchdown, is 6 points. A passing touchdown is 6 points. 7 yards on the ground is the same as 7 yards through the air. Like, it doesn't matter. And Jalen is not somebody that lacks confidence. Jalen knows what he's able to do. And they're running the offense that's working for them right now against the opponents that they're playing. Everybody thought that last week against Baltimore, they probably should have came out throwing the football. And since Baltimore was the number 2 rushing defense in the league, and what did the Eagles do? They ran the ball right down their throat. So again, you don't want to force anything. You can win in the playoffs by running the football. And if Jalen has to throw the ball, I'm pretty sure that he could do it. And I don't think that just because he's not doing it now, he's going to lack confidence in the playoffs. That's not going to happen. He has proven that he can do it. And when he has to make a throw in a game, just like last week, when there were a couple big plays, he hit Dallas Goedert on a big 3rd down. He hit A.J. Brown on a big 3rd down. When he's called upon, he is able to make those plays. So you don't force those type of plays into a game, because if the Eagles are up 28-0 in the second quarter, okay, maybe you do it, but also we're going to get to a point if it's 28-0, maybe at halftime, The Eagles come out, they get the ball first. Maybe that the starting offense is just out on the field for one more series, and then you go to the backups to get the guys off the field, especially somebody like Saquon who's been carrying the tote a lot. Jalen has started every game, and besides a couple of plays here and there for kneel downs at the end where Kenny Pickett came in, get him off the field, get AJ and Devontae off the field, get some of the starting offensive linemen off the field. You want to do what is best to score points as quickly as possible. And obviously the Eagles aren't the fastest starting team in the league, but it hasn't really mattered so far. So again, I am not forcing Jalen Hurts to throw the ball 25 times if the running game is working. It doesn't make sense.
And when you look statistically for Jalen Hurts, which you don't want to rely solely on statistics, but when you look statistically, it is one of his best of 5 seasons for where he started at least 15 games, where statistically it's his best from a passing standpoint. And I know that the more you throw, the more likely his completion percentage will come down, the more likely an interception is thrown. But when you look, he's got his highest completion percentage. He's got his second highest passing touchdown rate this season. He's got his second lowest interception rate of his career. He's got his second highest success rate when passing this year. He's got his highest yards per attempt when passing this year. He is passing when he needs to pass, and he's doing an extremely good job when he's put in the position to have to pass the ball. If he has to go into games where, and yes, he's been doing it by only having to throw the ball, 10 to 20 times, but and that plays into the point that, his completion percentage would come down. Certain aspects and rates would probably come down a little bit, but he is extremely effective when he's been forced to, so much so to the point that it is statistically one of his best passing seasons in his career. And yet there's this idea that something is being hidden. There's this idea like it's just because everyone's looking at the pass attempts and the passing yards, and they're saying something's wrong, something's not right. Jalen Hurts is not good at passing. That's what people are thinking. But when you look at the grand scheme of things and the actual, what is happening in the games, why throw the ball 30 times when you are gaining 65, 70% of your yards in a game on the ground? There's just no reason to.
Exactly. You don't want to force something at this moment. If push came to shove and the Eagles had to throw the football, I have confidence that Jalen can do it. And again, Jalen's not lacking confidence. Looking at the Panthers defense, they've run a 3-4. Ashawn Robinson, Shy Tuttle, LeBrian Ray are the line. Jadeveon Clowney, he's questionable. We'll see if he plays. He hasn't practiced all week, so I'm not 100% sure if he will play, but we know how much damage he's done against the Eagles in his heyday with the Seahawks knocking Carson Wentz out of a playoff game. The secondary, Michael Jackson, Jordan Fuller, Xavier Woods, J.C. Horn, a young guy, and Chow Smith-Wade. Looking at that secondary, I mean, I don't know if they'll be able to stop A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith if the Eagles were looking to go to the throwing game. I mean, again, this is a game that the Eagles should be able to impose their will. Whatever they want to do, they should be able to do it. And again, the Carolina Panthers are a professional football team. They have players that get paid, so it won't be like a pushover game. Will be like that? Yeah. Like it's going to start off. The first half will probably be like within a touchdown. But then that's where the Eagles usually come out in the second half and take control. The adjustments that are made both offensively and defensively have been outstanding this year in the second half, and I expect that again this week. Again, could this be a game that the Eagles want to see if they throw the football? If they can throw the football, sure. But again, the Panthers give up 170 yards on the ground, so why do something that's or why go away from your strength against the weakness of the opposing team?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the Ravens were the number one Russian defense, I think, or top 3 Russian defense heading into last week. And look at the way that this offensive line and running game imposed their will. If you can continue to impose your will that way and you don't fall behind dramatically on the scoreboard, like you said, you can win games in the playoffs by running the ball 60, 70% of the time. It's all a matter of where the game is going, where the game script is going. And it just so happens that this game script has never completely gotten away from this Philadelphia Eagles offense. The Carolina Panthers defense, like you said, I mean, Jadeveon Clowney, it looks like he should go. I mean, it kind of sounds like there's an injury bug in him, but the main portion of not having him play with mostly had to do with rest. JC Horn, I mean, I love JC Horn coming out. I'm sure you love JC Horn too.
I mean, I like Patrick Surtain more, but I think that was the same draft.
Yeah, but that was a Horn and Surtain debate. But
Devontae,
I mean,
Micah Parsons, Jalen Waddle, like that draft was stacked.
That was a great draft, yeah. But I mean, like JC Horn, like it's hard for some of these guys to be at their best when the rest of the majority of the defense around you is so bad. Like JC Horn is good, we know he's good. Jadeveon Clowney, he's good, we know he's good. 3.5 sacks for Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, he is getting older. He's 31, but that's kind of not the Jadeveon Clowney we're used to seeing. And then, like you said, A'Shawn Robinson having a fairly good season. But like guys like A'Shawn Robinson and Jadeveon Clowney in really good defenses are way better than 3 and 3.5 sack guys. Like easily double what they have in Carolina. But they have
their work cut out for them this week going up against Mailata and Johnson, the two best. And
even more so, exactly. Like you have such a tough offensive line to face. You're facing the number one offensive line pretty much in the NFL. So it makes things even more difficult that way. And an offense that just seems to, over the last 8 weeks, just impose their will on teams, and good teams too, much better teams than the Carolina Panthers. So it's going to be really tough for this Carolina Panthers defense to match up, 1-for-1 anywheres and find very much success. Like I can't give an edge to almost any position for the Carolina Panthers defensively versus the Eagles offensively. So it's unfortunate because there are some good players there. There are some players that, I like, and I've, looked on and wanted the Eagles to in past times wish the Eagles could have, but in reality, the situation just isn't great for some of them right now. And it makes it really difficult for them to play to their best.
Yeah, Ryan says this is something I think we can all agree on. Defensively, the Eagles D is so much fun to watch. Yes, including coverage, so much better and more fun than 2022 because all that team did was rely on a pass rush /front four. It was the pass rush DL or nothing. The DL made the back seven not have to play. If the pass rush didn't do anything, the back seven would get smoked in coverage. Now it's the back seven carrying the team without having to rely so much on pass rush and front four and average and adequate pass rush. So that's an interesting debate. The 2022 defense against this defense, they set an Eagles record and close to an NFL record with 70 sacks. That team had Hassan Reddick, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave on the line. The linebackers were T.J. Edwards and Kaiser White. And in the secondary, you had a younger Darius Slay and an all-pro James Bradbury with C.J. G.J. and Marcus Epps. So, wow, I can't believe I remembered that entire defense. Granted, it was only 2 years ago. But yeah, it definitely.
Ryan, you just need to write a book, fella. A good one, Jesse.
But yeah, looking at the defense, I mean, this defense is fun to watch. I love the young guys. I love Quinion. I love Cooper, Jalen Carter, and Nakobe Dean, CJGJ. I mean, I love like watching this defense. It's fun. They're intense. They're physical. They get after it. But that 2022 defense was good. Like we can't give them. I guess it also does help that the schedule that they played and the quarterbacks they played in 2022 weren't that good. So there's some give and take, but like it would be maybe in a different maybe in an off-season episode, we'll see what this team does. We can compare like the offense from 2022 to the offense from now, and then the defense from 2022 and the defense from now. I mean, defensive coordinator, we're definitely better now than we were back then with what's his face, Jonathan Gannon. But that will definitely be an interesting discussion we have in the offseason after we get done this 2024 season, which is hopefully after the Super Bowl in New Orleans.
Yeah, definitely. Vic Fangio also doing so good with these guys, even though they really weren't guys who initially fit to what he likes. He found ways to make them work and help them play to the best of their ability. I mean, I agree. Like we watch like one of the biggest frustrations with guys like Jim Schwartz and Jonathan Gannon, where they tried to fit, a square peg in a circle hole, and it just didn't work. And some guys just didn't work. But then they went off and they found success elsewhere. And the reason they went off and found that success elsewhere was because they were allowed to do what they were good at. And you can see it, if you want to play up on your guy defensively, Vic Fangio is not stopping Kenyon Mitchell if they see something or they see a circumstance where they need to play up or they need to do something different than maybe what the plays call him for. Same with Cooper, like the communication, exceptional. Like I think the energy that comes from the 2024 team is definitely better than the energy that I found in the 2022 team. And it could be that, they're much younger. Like if you look at the average age of those two, I haven't done it, but if you actually took the time to do the average age, I bet they're at least a couple years younger. And I guess to me, the reason I like this defense more is I can get more excited about the future with it because there's so many pieces that are still here for so much longer that they can carry into future years.
Expectations coming into this year for this defense weren't as where they are now. That's for sure. There was a lot of talk about if they can be like a mid-tier defense, but this is a top 5 defense. So I think that kind of changes the expectations for this team, as the season has gone on. We expected the offense to be good. The offense has been good. Has it been as good as we thought it would be? In some aspects, yes, and in some aspects, no. I think that's safe to say. Like the running game, I don't know. We all knew Saquon had talent, but Saquon has been a lot better than I think we've all thought he was going to be. And again, AJ Brown was out for 3 games. AJ Brown was out for 3 games. Devontae's been out for a couple games. So, like, we haven't had, like you mentioned, the full complement on offense. Like speaking on the entire offensive line, Dallas Goedert, Brown, Smith, Saquon and Jalen, like they have played together 2 games, 3 games maybe. It hasn't been a lot. So hopefully Dallas Goedert can get healthy and, over the next couple of weeks, and we get this full go towards the end of the year, the last three games of the year potentially, which are all division games. Let them all cook together so they're going into the playoffs, flying high, going into the playoffs, building that rapport, keeping that cohesion together so that whoever they play in the first round of the playoffs, if they don't get the number 1 seed, like they're going to come into the link facing a buzzsaw.
Oh, you do not want to come into the link during the playoffs with the Eagles having a home field advantage. It would just be crazy. And like you said, getting these guys all back healthy, it would be humongous. And like, I mean, we know like when Dallas Goedert's been healthy, he's only called upon when he needs to be called upon and he makes a play. But to have the full complement, all those guys with Saquon Barkley, then I don't think there's any doubt that the passing game can get to work. But when we've seen, Jalen Hurts have to throw the football sometimes this year, the receiving guys are Jahan Dotson, Paris Campbell, Grant Calcaterra, who granted he has a very good rapport with, but I prefer Dallas Goedert to Grant Calcaterra, even from a receiving aspect. So like he's had to go to some players that you not necessarily would see. What would happen if you had that complement of players every single game? Would you see him throw the ball a little more, even though the run game's working? Would you see him be more successful with throwing the football? You never know. It's all presumptive at this point. But I mean, I'd love to see the full complement come playoff time. Hopefully Dallas Goedert will be back and good to go. And Jahan Dotson and Grant Calcaterra's secondary pieces, love them, respect them, give them 1 or 2 targets a game, and they might be able to do something with it. But having to lean on them too heavily, I mean,
I'm tired of Britton Covey getting targets too, like we got last week. Like they should have go to Dotson. If you're going to throw the ball to Covey, just throw it to Dotson. I think Dotson.
But if you're throwing to Covey or Dotson, it's starting behind the line of scrimmage and hoping that they can do.
Well, I'd rather it be Dotson than Covey. I'm done with Covey. Covey can go. Like he's a crash test dummy back there returning punts. He's not as smooth as Cooper DeJean. And I know we don't really want Cooper back there, but he's the best that we have returning punts right now. Like maybe in the offseason, get somebody else to do it. But Covey, he can go for all I care. All right. So before we get to our player of the game, our players to watch, keys to the game, and predictions, let's do our unheralded player of the week for week 13 in the NFL. So a player that stepped up, a player that's under the radar, some not one of the superstar all-pro type players. Do you have your unheralded player, Connor?
I do. And I hate that I'm picking a Dallas Cowboy, and I think I've done this. This might be the second time that I've done it, but I'm going with DeMarvion Overshown with the key interception, the difference-making interception for the Dallas Cowboys in their 27-20 victory over the Giants. And I also mostly pick him for the fact that he actually gives, like, Cowboys fans actually think they have a chance because they have, like, a very, very slim chance of making the playoffs. So I love to see that they actually feel that there's a chance again and that there's some sort of fuel to the Cowboys fire when they're done. They're done. Pack it in, aim for the higher draft pick. Although continue to try and get a middle of the road first round pick that you mess up again. I'm okay with that.
Well, they are good at drafting.
They are good. They miss some, but they hit some. If I have, maybe if it's a mid-first round pick and you're debating guys, maybe you make, the wrong decision. The Jalen Reagor versus Justin Jefferson decision. Maybe you make the Reagor decision this time.
No, they took the CeeDee Lamb decision. That's what they did.
It's just in theory, a possibility,
So mine is the reigning NFC Special Team Player of the Week, Braden Mann. And I mentioned this on Monday. This is who it's going to be. 5 punts, I think all 5 inside the 20, 2 inside the 10, 1 inside the 5. One was down at the 1, one was down at the 5. So Braden Mann has been the best punter the Eagles had since Cam Johnson, probably, if I'm not mistaken. Cam Johnson was really good. But Braden Mann has been very, very good for the Eagles. So he is my unheralded play. He flipped the field. And you have the Ravens starting inside the 5-yard line, like forcing them to go, a full length of the football field. And I think when they stopped when they started at the 1, they may have only gotten 1 first down and then had to punt the ball back to the Eagles. So I'm going to go Braden Mann. All right, Connor.
The story about Braden Mann coming is kind of cool to Philly because he went to Pittsburgh. There was like a time where he flirted with the idea of coming to Philadelphia, didn't come. And went to Pittsburgh, and there was like a back and forth there. So the story of having him in Philly is kind of cool too. So, and it was 6 punts, 5 inside the 20, 2 inside the 10. But
close enough.
Who's counting?
Who is counting? All right, Connor. Your players to watch, keys to the game, and then we'll do predictions. Who you got?
Oh, for me, it feels like boring to do it, but I'm going with Saquon Barkley. He's well on his way to, that record-setting season, and this is one of those games where you may have lost some ground in some games. This is a chance to get a 150, 200-yard game, and while, you don't want to continue to watch the tread be added to the tire or worn down on the tire, that this is a game where you can take advantage fully. The good thing is he might be able to get 150 yards and not see the field again for a whole half of football. So hopefully we get to that position and we get in that spot where he doesn't have to see the football field the whole game. But Saquon Barkley offensively, and just take what's working for you. While I did talk about wanting to see Jalen Hurts throw the ball, and I do want to see him throw the ball, and I do want to see him find success against the team through the air that he should be able to find success through the air. If the run game's working with Saquon Barkley, with Kenny Gainwell, then continue to lean on it and do what's working best. But if you get the opportunity to flash that that passing arm, definitely flash it. I think, you know what, you might as well go ahead and show it. Show some good throws. Shut guys like Emmanuel Acho up. Show them we're not hiding anything. We're just taking what's given to us. Defensively, I'm going with Nolan Smith. He's having a decent season. So people are debating, is it a bounce back? Is it big enough to be a bounce back season when he didn't really get to play a whole lot last year? But I think this could be a game where Nolan Smith could go multi-sack, that type of game. You could pick Josh Sweat to do it. You could pick Nolan Smith to do it, but I'm leaning into Nolan Smith on this one because I'd like to see, it's been a feel-good story with Nolan Smith. He's starting to get his feet under him. You just love to see it. So hopefully, I'm going with Nolan Smith because like you said, we should be able to feast. This is a Midland offensive line. We should be able to feast against him. We should be able to get it one of those 4, 5, 6 sack games and be in Bryce Young's face. If you were able to be in Lamar Jackson's face, like what was it, half of the defensive snaps had a pressure of some sort? If you were able to do that against Lamar Jackson and that offensive line, you can absolutely do that and some up against this Carolina Panthers offensive line. So Nolan Smith, and just get after Bryce Young. Bryce Young has improved over the last, couple of weeks, but I do think that, he's still young. He's still a guy who's learning. He's still a guy who can definitely make a lot of mistakes. So get after him and he'll make those mistakes and he'll put the ball in harm's way and put it in your hands.
So before I give mine, Tech Quentin, thanks for joining us. I'd like to see Hurts get some reps at passing the ball. When people say that, and I'm not saying this is your thinking, Quentin, but it seems like people think Hurts throws the ball 5 times a game. They do realize that the Eagles had the ball for 3 minutes in the third quarter last week and ran the ball most of the second half because they were up by 2 scores. Again, as we've mentioned the entire time, let's not force passes when you don't have to force passes. And Jack Straw, hey guys, good to see you. Go Birds. Thanks for joining us. Welcome aboard. So my offensive player, I'm going to go with Jalen just because I want to shut people up. No, I'm kidding. I think Jalen is going to be able to have a decent game through the air with his top 2 receivers out there and running the football. And he's going to not take unnecessary hits and not throw the ball unnecessarily into dangerous spots. So he'll play within the offense. He'll get a tush-push touchdown probably. He'll hand the ball off to Saquon, and he'll hit AJ and Devontae, and AJ will probably have the quietest 100 yards like he does, it seems like, every other week. We'll look at the box score and it'll be like, AJ had 100? How? Yeah, that's what happens. On the defensive side of the football, our Jack says, Jalen takes so much hate, man, not deserved. We winning. Saquon took some pressure off of him. 1,000% agree with that. Don't force something that you don't have to force. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with the rookies, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. One of them is getting a turnover this week. I don't know which one, but it's going to happen. And I think I've said it every week, but one of them.
We're tired of predicting the Quinyon Mitchell pick. Let's just make it happen, Quinyon. Make it happen.
One of them is going to get a turnover. Keys to the game: get after Bryce Young. He'll throw one to you. This Panthers team, look, I always say you don't want to overlook them, but this Panthers team is not good. So the Eagles should impose their will early and get the starters out in the second half. And let's see Two Gloves pick it out there. All right, prediction time.
Tech says disagree. I want to see Hurts throw the ball unnecessarily. LOL.
I don't.
And then he says, I want to see a good passing attack before the playoffs. Let's make sure we are understood, because we said it throughout this episode. You can win this game on the ground as long as it doesn't get out of control. You don't need to have this throw the ball 30 times and connect on 90% of passes, pass and attack to win a game in the playoffs. And that just seems to be the thing. It's like if we aren't showing our pass and attack now, it's not going to be there in the playoffs. I don't necessarily agree with that. I know, LJ, you definitely don't agree with it. We know that the run game is going to be a crucial part of it. We know that, like, even going into the playoffs with this defense, I'd be shocked to see Jalen Hurts have to throw the ball 30 times in any playoff game this year, because I think that this defense is that good too. And they showed it against Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. So I don't think we'll need to get to a point where Jalen Hurts is putting the ball in harm's way like we saw at the beginning of the year.
And as Jack Straw says, just win. Exactly. I don't care how it's done. Just win. All right. Prediction, Connor. Who you got? Well, before you go, I'm 7-5. You're 6-6. We both lost last week because we both picked the Ravens. So you're going to continue the trend of picking the opposing team so we win?
The way we've talked about the Panthers, I can't. Like, at least I spoke very highly of the Ravens last week and gave them the W. I'm going with the Eagles. I think the Eagles can win this one, not overlooking them, not disrespecting them. I just think that there's nowhere I can pick positionally where the Panthers have any advantage, which spells to me either a trap game or an easy victory. And I'm going with the easy victory on this one. I'm going 31-17. And I mean, I think they put up like 10 of those points in garbage time, the Panthers.
Who, you have the Eagles winning 31-17? I'm kidding.
Yes, sorry, Eagles.
Jack Shaw says, this season's been a beautiful thing, man. Embrace it. 1,000% agree. Just has a better, the vibe. I know we hate the word vibes, but the vibes around this team are so much better than they were last year, even though they started 10-1. It felt like every win last week was pulling teeth. They weren't happy about it, but this team, this feels like 2017, 2022, just the way that when they win, they enjoy it, they embrace it.
Don't let the national media or the local media get you down on this year or get you questioning this year. It is a beautiful thing, and we should all embrace it. Criticize if you want and throw your criticism. I'm sure it's definitely warranted in certain circumstances, but embrace it as well. Enjoy it as well.
So I'm going 31-14 Eagles. Again, it might, in the first quarter, it might be a back and forth affair just because that's what happens. But no need to fear. Saquon Barkley will be there to run through the Panthers. He may have $150 this game, which will be nice in his pursuit of the rushing record. I'm really intrigued to see what happens if it gets to week 18 against the Giants and he's within shouting distance, but they have their seed wrapped up. What Sirianni will do. We saw what happened last year when they played A.J. Brown. He got hurt. They didn't have him in the playoffs against the Bucs, and the offense looked awful. Like, if yours, and this is something that we'll discuss over the next couple of weeks, depending on the numbers by Saquon, but like, if you're Sirianni, that's a big decision you have to make. Go in week 18 against his former team if he's within 100 yards of Eric Dickerson's record. Like, that's
what I was going to say. What's the number? What's the number that gets
him? If he's within 100 yards, do you play him?
I would like to see it be 50. It takes a lot to get 100 yards, even as Saquon Barkley. As much as, he has
even though the Giants won't have Dexter Lawrence and they're pretty much quit on the season.
But
it's a home game.
And you would hope that they wouldn't think this way. But if you know that Saquon's out there solely for that and all the bashing that they've taken because of Saquon Barkley, I would be almost scared to put him out on that football field and not think that something might happen or that they might try to do something dirty. You hope not, but I know that
the offensive line wants that. Like, it's a Saquon record. It would be a Saquon, like Saquon's name on it. But this offensive line has been blocking their ass off for him all year. They might want him to do
I agree with Tech too. If Saquon's close, let Saquon make the decision. I would definitely agree with that. Like, you got to go with how Saquon feels too. If he's within like 100 and call it like 105 yards, and he's like, I think I need the rest. I think I need to take some tread off heading into the playoffs. Let Saquon make that call. This is, at the end of the day, as much as we as Eagles fans want to see this happen, want to see this, record be on the Eagles book, in their Eagles record book, I do think that it's on Saquon too. Saquon wants it, but is the moment right? Is the time right? Is the situation right? I think it's going to be on Saquon.
I mean, Saquon against the Giants made the decision not to go for his personal best. I do think that I think that it would be a group effort or a group decision between him and the offensive line if they left it up to them. And you know that as an offensive lineman, like when you have a chance to be a part of history, you'd want to do it. And again, it depends on if it's 170 yards, no.
And you need to start an offensive line out there if you're going for this.
I mean, if you're not starting Jalen or the offensive line, Saquon's not out there. But if all of them are starting, you go for it.
Exactly. So it does, in terms, have to be an all-inclusive decision because all of them have to be willing to sacrifice their body in likely a meaningless game for that record. So.
And it also, I mean, if the game means something, which could potentially, and again, I'm not saying the Lions are going to lose a couple of games between now and then, but they do have the Bills, they do have the Niners, and then that Viking game could mean a lot for the Vikings. Like, if the game,
I hope it means something. I want the Lions
if the game means something for the Eagles too, everybody's playing, and he definitely would go for it. But it's going to depend on how many yards he gets against the Panthers, the Steelers, the Commanders, the Cowboys. Like, there's 5 games left, so. He might not even get close to the record, and this is a moot point that we're discussing.
We continue to visit weekly.
Yeah, we'll see what his numbers are. Right now he's on pace for 2,123 yards, which would be a record. So we'll see how many yards he gets this week against the Panthers. Thank you all for tuning. Oh wait, Jack Straw says such a classy dude and hasn't won since Penn State. I think he's just happy to be on a good team. And cross that bridge when we get there, exactly. And that's what we will do. Thank you all for tuning in to this week's preview edition of the Kelly Green Hour. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJRL54. And follow the Eagles Ping Pool Network on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and wherever you get your podcast at Eagles Ping Pool Network. We'll be back on Monday with a review of the game between the Eagles and the Panthers. Hopefully it's our 9th consecutive victory Green Hour. For Connor, I'm LJ. Thank you for tuning in to the Kelly Green Hour.
Fly, Eagles, fly.